through the sharing of worship, of meals, and of meeting the needs of the poor in their midst, hospitality created in the early church a sense of unity. This early sense of oneness began later to take structural form in Rome, and thus began to support the church through its constant concern for Christians everywhere, support it as it spread and as it grew. But it had a downside. Along the way, the underdog position of Christians in both the Jewish and the Roman societies began to create within the early Christian community a sense of exclusion rather than inclusion. And so we find in our selfsame Christian scriptures texts from, for example, the letters of John, which were probably written in the latter part of the first century, 80 to 100 years after the birth of Christ. From 1 John 4, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world." And from the second letter of John, "Many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. Any such person is the deceiver. Be on your guard, so that you do not lose what we have worked for. Do not receive into the house or welcome anyone who comes to you and does not bring the right teaching, for to welcome such is to participate in the evil deeds of such a person." It is not hard to understand how a small group of persecuted folk would become very nervous about strangers. This impulse to exclusivity for the sake of safety and for the protection of sound doctrine intensified as the church became centered in Rome and became synonymous with the expanse of the Roman Empire. Taking the biblical mandate of Jesus to go into all the world and make disciples, Christianity developed a strong missionary emphasis, but in a manner exactly opposite to the early biblical missionaries such as Paul. The later Christian missionaries went to foreign lands with the intent not to be guests, but to be agents of change, agents of conversion. And so we moved from being fearful that our own hospitality would be abused to abusing the hospitality of others. For example, such as our treatment of the indigenous peoples of this land that we call North America. Fortunately, somewhere toward the end of the 19th century and throughout the 20th century, Western theologians began to rethink our method of missionary work and to dig around in the ancient Jewish foundations of our faith. Our present liturgies and our present theological understanding is more of a return to that ancient call to welcome the stranger. We recognize that our own national beginnings are based on the reality of immigration. Certainly, we Episcopalians need to recognize that had Elizabeth not set some of us forth to claim new worlds, there would be no Episcopal Church today. In 1886, the Statue of Liberty was erected in the harbor of New York City. In a fundraising auction a few years prior to that, a woman named Emma Lazarus, a poet, wrote a poem and auctioned it off to raise some money to help pay for a pedestal to put the statue on. It was not until 1903 that this poem was engraved on a plaque and placed inside the statue. Today, at least part of it is more engraved in the hearts of Americans. The poem was called The New Colossus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed, sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. This, then, has become a new understanding of how the Americans, in the United States at least, offer hospitality. But in the 20th century, in a world made small by technology, national hospitality has assumed many, many complex layers. There are still people fleeing from poverty and famine, seeking a better life in a new land. There are still people seeking religious and personal freedom, freedom from tyranny and oppression. The numbers of people moving from nation to nation around the world are enormous, and their reasons are as varied as they are. There are no easy answers to this problem. As Christians, though, we must go back and stand in our place, which is with Jesus. Jesus clearly taught his followers to feed the hungry and provide shelter for the poor, to reach out to those in prison and oppressed. In fact, Jesus not only taught the need for these behaviors, but went so far as to identify himself with those in need, saying, "When you have done it to these, then you have done it to me. If you want to find me, then go be with the poor, because when you feed someone who is hungry, you are feeding me." There are no easy answers to this problem, but there is the overwhelming conclusion that we as Christians are called to live Jesus' mandate in today's world.